Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 3 of the All Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Steve Wellbaum. I'd like to start off everything by just thanking everybody for showing your support for the podcast, asking questions, giving me some new topics for every week. Thank you so much to everybody that's just been supporting me. It's been pretty busy just with school and work, and of course keeping this up. So thank you to everybody who has shown their support for this podcast and wanted to grow. So just wanted to start things off with a little bit of Premier League action. I know we've started with football a couple of times, but this really needs to be talked about. The Liverpool versus Man City game this weekend. And I wanted to kind of start off by saying I don't think Liverpool's the best team in world football. I know that the thumbnail said that I might, but honestly, I think there are some better teams in world football than Liverpool. But Liverpool is getting really scary now because of the fact that they now, for the first time since I don't know when, they actually have depth in their roster, especially in that back four. With Dejan Lovren being able to come in and play alongside Virgil van Dijk, they have at times when Lovren had been not as great as I know he did say in that interview one time that he was the best center back in world football. No. But having Dejan come in and be able to do what he did in that game was really astounding from Klopp. And also, I mean, they can play Matip, Lovren, and Gomez all in that back four and rotate them out. I know that Arnold and Robertson are very important to that to those fullback positions, but being able to throw in Gomez and have him be an effective starter is really good for that team. And that's why I think they will win the league this year, because they have not Man City depth, but they have more depth than Tottenham, more depth than Liverpool or than Manchester United, and especially more center back and defender depth than Arsenal. I think Chelsea is good. It's younger, but I think Liverpool can definitely win the league, and winning this game this weekend against City helped that tremendously. Now, I don't think City's dead in the water. I still think they're going to get second. I don't think that I like Leicester. I really like Leicester. I think Leicester could get third or fourth, but I don't think that that City's completely out of the second place spot. I definitely think they can get that second place spot. Even with this rough 3-1 loss, Pep the entire game looked like he was going to pop a blood vessel on the sidelines from that VAR. Is it a handball? Is it not a handball? And I just wanted to kind of say that I wanted to kind of talk about VAR for a little bit. I think VAR is good for the game. I know that a lot of people don't really think that VAR is this kind of evil entity that is supposed to rig games for certain teams. But in all honesty, I think it's important to get the calls right. I think it's important to stop the game because world football is moving so fast at such an alarming rate that you don't get any time to stop. And this is also from an American perspective. And football, American football is all about stoppage and letting plays develop. So that might be a little bit of a biasy for me, but I just think that I think that VAR is something that needs to be in that game. You need to review every single goal. I know that it's kind of, how should I say, it takes away some of the integrity to the game, because a lot of the time, some of the greatest goals of all time would never happen if VAR was around. But I think it's important to get the calls right. I think we live in a society in sports where every call needs to be right. And I think that VAR, when used properly, has to be employed, because there will be games where we don't want to have another Maradona hand of God in this sports realm anymore. So I think VAR is important. I think it can be used like in the City game. I think it can be used ineffectively, and I think especially in that Tottenham City game, I think that it was used a little harshly. I think all the way back week 3, I think it was week 3. I think that was used a little harshly, but I do think that VAR is something really important to our league. And then to talk about the table a little bit, Leicester at 2. With City going down, Leicester's at 2 right now. Honestly, I'm very okay with Leicester being at 2 for the moment. I don't think they're going to stay at 2. I think that they've had the opportunity to beat up on some teams that aren't as good as them, including they got the tie at Chelsea when Chelsea hadn't really figured out what they were supposed to do. Oh, no, they actually won against Chelsea. So, regardless, I think if Chelsea and Leicester played today, I think Chelsea would win, just because Pulisic is playing his butt off. And so I do think that that Leicester at 2 is fine. I don't disagree with it too much. Sheffield United at 5. They're still at 5. Are you kidding me? We're coming up near the winter break or the January transfer window, which is almost midway in the season. This will not last. I promise you that. I thought Sheffield United would be one of the teams to get relegated this season. They don't have any stars. They don't have a real player that you can latch onto and say, yes, that is our identity. You are our identity. They don't have a Jack Grealish. They don't have Jimenez for Wolves. They don't have an Ashley Barnes. They don't really have that star player that you can look at and say, yes, that is our identity. That's what we want to do. They don't even have, their goalkeeper, maybe. Their keeper's pretty good. But, Brighton has Lewis Dunk. You are our identity. We look off of you. You're our captain. We love you. You're great. I just don't think Sheffield United don't really have that kind of player. I don't know. I can see them falling very fast, especially considering the only hard game they've really played was the Arsenal game. And that I think that game might be a turning point in Emery's job. I personally think Emery should stay. I think that he didn't really get the players that he wanted to get. And I think him buying I think the Nicolas Pepe deal was honestly not necessary to that team. I know a lot of people like Pepe. I know he's a good player, but I think that it's not really necessary, especially considering that they have such a bad problem with center backs, and David Luiz does not fix their center back problem. I know he was on cheap, but anyways, a little Arsenal aside, Sheffield United, don't think they're going to stay at 5. And then the 6th place spot, I know Arsenal's at 6 right now, but I think that eventually United's going to take them, especially with the win at against Brighton at Old Trafford is really going to help them. I do I do have questions about both Arsenal and United, but if I had to take one of those teams, I'd definitely take United, just because they have more. They have more younger talent, I think, and I don't really a lot of Arsenal's issues right now have to do with personalities clashing. I like Arsenal's attack. I like their top three, but if Aubameyang is not playing well, if Pepe is not playing well, and Lacazette is not playing well, they're not winning any game this year because they're so reliant on those three up top. So, and United doesn't really have to. I don't think they have to focus on Marcus Rashford as much as Arsenal has to focus on Aubameyang. I think they can get stuff done without Marcus Rashford, though Marcus Rashford is the face of Manchester United at the moment. So let me know in the comments. Actually, I'd really like to know your guys' opinion on the Premier League table, what you think will happen, and who you think will get relegated this season. My relegations are definitely. I think it's going to be Southampton, Watford, and I thought for a while it would be Newcastle or Sheffield, but I really don't know who else. Definitely Watford. They have no clue what's going on, and in Southampton you can't lose 9-0 and expect to stay up. Like it's just not going to happen. Even though I like some of Southampton's pieces, I don't think they're going to stay up. I honestly thought Newcastle would go down at the beginning of the season. I don't think Brighton will. Thank the Lord. Graham Potter's doing some good things, and we won some games we had to. Especially that Tottenham game really did some good for us. So yeah, I think definitely Watford and Southampton, and honestly, it might be Norwich just because of the points they have right now. They have like nothing. I know that's the bottom three currently, but it might be unless Timu Pukki can really get things going again, like he did against City. I don't think Norwich is going to stay up. So, all right, all you American sports fans, you can ignore everything until the 12:40 mark. Now we're talking about some NFL, and I wanted to talk about the game that was last night really specifically. So Monday Night Football, amazing game, back and forth. Russell Wilson played like a beast. San Francisco's defense still looks dominant with 3 turnovers in that game. I really like San Francisco. I think they're really good. I like the Seahawks. But here's a problem that I find in a lot of sports. I watch a lot of other sports media outfits, and I really like that they can voice their opinions, and they're very pompous, and they really like what they're saying. But can we just cool off on hot takes all the time? Because this Monday night game will not determine. I personally, I don't think this will determine the rest of the NFC landscape. I don't even think it'll determine the NFC West. I think San Francisco's still a game ahead in that spot, and people are already starting to say that the Seahawks are the best team in the NFL, or at least in the NFC. I firmly disagree with that. I still think San Francisco's better. I think that no other team in history, let me just get this squaring away. No other team in history besides the 70s Dolphins ever went undefeated in throughout the entire year. I know there was the 2000s Patriot team with Randy Moss that almost did it and then lost in the Super Bowl. But there's no other team that's ever done that. And I don't think that this San Francisco team really has the goods to go all the way throughout the season. And that's what I thought coming into this game. And I thought Monday night, standalone game, Russell Wilson MVP. Like, I'm thinking Seahawks will win this game because just for the fact that it's almost impossible for a team to go undefeated throughout the entire regular season. And I don't think San Francisco is good enough to do that. I thought that this game would come down to Russell Wilson, and I knew it would be close because the Seahawks have played every single game really close. So don't get anybody that's watching in the sports media world, if you are watching this, just take a breath, just kind of take it in and say, that was a really good game. The Seahawks are now a little bit better. The 49ers are a little bit worse. And that was a great game. And we don't need to say all this about, oh, Russell Wilson is a god. San Francisco, Jimmy Garoppolo looks terrible. They really need to work on get a better quarterback, or what happened to Emmanuel Sanders? What's up with him? So, I just think everybody needs to take a breath and say that was a great game. Move on, because it's not that game. That game was probably the best game of the year so far. Might be. I can't really think of another game that was that good. So it might be the best game of the season, but might be the best game of the season, but it's not the season. So if we look a little closer, though, in that game, I wanted to talk about the MVP race and the MVP race for this current season at the midseason point. Russell Wilson is my pick for the MVP. A lot of people like McCaffrey. A lot of people like Lamar. A lot of people like Deshaun Watson. And I like all those players. If I were to see any of those players win the MVP, I honestly would not be that upset. Maybe Lamar, just because I think he's not really as developed as a passer still. I mean, his best passing games were against Miami and Cincinnati. But a lot of people will say, that the Patriots game was very important for Lamar's MVP run. He really didn't pass it that well. It was more of his dynamic playmaking with his running abilities got him there. But I don't think any of those four players that are headlining, or any of those three players that are headlining for the MVP, are really carrying their team like Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson has been in several one-score games against Cincinnati, against Tampa Bay, against the 49ers last night, and the Rams. Those are the ones I can think of off the top of my head. And I don't even know. There might have been another game that I think there might be another game that they were really close and Russell Wilson carried them. But this is what Russell has been doing ever since the Legion of Boom fell apart. And he still made the playoffs. And he's still been a relevant quarterback. I think Russell Wilson is one of the greatest quarterbacks that I will ever see in my lifetime. I think him and Steve Young have so many similarities to each other, and I love Steve Young. I think Steve Young is one of the best quarterbacks ever, one of the best quarterback talents ever. Don't think he's the GOAT, but I think he's really, really fantastic. And I think by the time Russell finishes off with everything, when he's finished with his career, and he probably will win an MVP at some point. I mean, he has to. He is carrying that team. I mean, it's literally him and Jadeveon Clowney and Bobby Wagner. Those are literally the only three stars, big stars. Tyler Lockett's okay. DK Metcalf is okay. He could be a star in this league. And Josh Gordon coming there, I mean, he has so much baggage that he's kind of washed up at this point. So Russell Wilson is carrying that offense at this point. I think McCaffrey, though he is carrying his team, and an argument could be made for McCaffrey. I like McCaffrey. I don't think he's the best back in football, but I do think he's a very competent star. He's the only thing on that offense at this point. Like the quarterback, Kyle Allen, he's forcing checkdowns to Christian McCaffrey. So that's why he's getting all that production. It's because Kyle Allen's just a baby, basically, in this league. And he doesn't – there's so many design plays by this Ron Rivera-led team to Christian McCaffrey just because he's the only offensive playmaker. Him, Curtis Samuel's fine. I like Curtis Samuel. He went to Ohio State. I like him. I like DJ Moore, but they're just checking down to him like all the time. So I think there should be an asterisk by Christian McCaffrey. I think Deshaun Watson is probably the closest one to Russell Wilson. I mean, you can't take – he had play of the year this year against the Raiders to win that game while getting kicked in the face and spinning around. If he wins MVP, I won't be upset. I definitely won't be upset. Maybe a little bit for Lamar. Maybe I'll be a little disappointed for McCaffrey. But if that Houston quarterback wins, I will be pretty much okay. I might want Russell Wilson to win, but he has been able to take over that team, especially with and they've given him some pieces along the way with a new left tackle and 2 new running backs and another corner on defense. So I just think it was okay that they gave him a little bit more, some more pieces. And then, so I really like Deshaun Watson, but Russell Wilson definitely will take the cake for me. And then I wanted to kind of talk about some wild card spots. Pittsburgh being in a wild card spot, I think is going to be over very quickly. I do think that playing Cleveland, they do have a chance to beat Cleveland. I don't think Cleveland's very good. I don't think they'll have any troubles with Cincinnati, sadly. But Mason Rudolph, and they kind of talked about this last game because I was watching the Rams game. Mason Rudolph is a quarterback that his whole career has played in Oklahoma State, played against some of the worst defenses in all of football, in all of college football, and put up insane numbers and had great receivers and had a great coach in Mike Gundy. I really liked him coming out of college, but the NFL game is not the same at all to that Oklahoma State team. And by him having to come into that scenario where Big Ben is out and there are so many young receivers around him that aren't experienced. I mean, Washington, he was with him at Oklahoma State, which was good. And Juju Smith is a great talent. I think he's a number 1 receiver. And I know a lot of other people don't think he is, but I think he is. And he's got a bunch of really, really young running backs. I like James Conner. I think he's a starter. I think he's definitely a starter. I don't think he's going to win any kind of awards or anything, but he's a starter in this league. Samuels is good. Benny Snell, I think, was a great pickup in this draft. I really like Benny Snell, but and the defense is good, but I just think that Pittsburgh has so much of a ceiling because because Mason Rudolph can't do exactly what he wanted to do in college. He is forced to check down so many times. And that offensive line for Pittsburgh, they were getting completely eaten up by the Rams this week and forcing so many errant throws and checkdowns. I just think Pittsburgh O-line is not the same as it was just a few years ago. So I don't think Pittsburgh will stay in this wild card race. Oakland and Jacksonville, I think Jacksonville with Nick Foles, there might be a little bit of growing pains before they start, picking up some pace. But if Nick Foles can do what he did when he came back to Philly the first time and the second time to win the Super Bowl and to be super close to the NFC Championship, there's no reason that Jacksonville can't make the playoffs. And then Oakland, honestly, this is a little bit of a strong take from me, but I think Oakland could seriously threaten that division at this point. I think the defense for the Kansas City Chiefs has some extremely glaring issues, and that showed in the Tennessee game. You can't let Ryan Tannehill keep them in that game. With that defense, I know that they lost a couple people that they wanted to have, but if I were Kansas City, I would go. You have a very small window with Mahomes because Mahomes will be the highest paid quarterback in football at some point. I 100% believe that. Tyreek Hill will get a big deal. Travis Kelce will get a big deal. You're going to want to keep a few defensive players. So I really think it's in their best interest to go out right now hopefully before the season ends, and you need to bring in somebody because you can't. This defense is not working. I liked what they did last year where they were like, okay, we can focus on the secondary a little bit later. We got some good pass rushing pieces because that's what the Steelers have been doing for years, and that works fine. So don't worry about the secondary. We can just get to the quarterback, get some pass rush. It's fine. We'll figure it out from there. And then they got rid of Justin Houston. I was like, what? You can't get rid of Justin Houston? He's your best pass rusher. That just boggled me. And then they brought in Tyrann Mathieu, which I think he's okay. I like Tyrann Mathieu. But he's not rushing the quarterback every play. You really need as Kansas City, and Kansas City fans should also take this to heart. One of the most important things that you need to do as a football team is get a pass rush and stop the run. And you can't do that with a strong safety / free safety / corner, like dynamic secondary player like a Tyrann Mathieu. You're not going to stop the run every time because of that. You need a big guy bolstering that defensive line and that pass rush. So I really don't think that Kansas City's going to have a lot of success. And Tennessee, for the I know that they're in the wild card race. They're 5-5. Tennessee is that team and they've been doing this for the past couple of years under Mariota and now with this has kind of been their identity. Is they're always like a bubble team. They almost made the playoffs last year. They made the playoffs a couple of years ago. They even won a playoff game. Wow. But Tennessee has this issue where I don't really know what they are. I don't know if they're going to win the division. The division's definitely weakened with Jacoby Brissett being out and Nick Foles kind of slowly urging his way into that spot of being back as a quarterback. But I just think, Tennessee they don't have any real big stars. I like Corey Davis. I like Derrick Henry, but I just think Tennessee has to kind of figure out an identity for themselves at this point. And with Ryan Tannehill at quarterback, you're really not going to find any kind of identity. So, and then for the NFC, Philly and Carolina, I know Carolina lost. I know Philly didn't have a game, but I think they definitely could make a wild card spot. And this is, I know a lot of people are hopping on the Minnesota bandwagon, but it's still Kirk Cousins, guys. Come on, it's Kirk Cousins. He's going to play a game, and he's going to play a big game on Monday night. I know that the Cowboys game was a Monday night, or it was a Sunday night game. There's a big game, but Minnesota, I don't trust them at all. I know their division is kind of falling apart. They need to still play Green Bay again, and I don't trust that team. I don't trust Kirk Cousins. I think there was some rifting between the coaching staff and the team itself as well, with Mike Zimmer might have lost his job if he didn't perform well. And I know that defense is really strong, but I don't trust Minnesota as far as I can throw them at this point. And I can't throw them very far because they got some big dudes on that D line. But yeah, Minnesota, I just don't know. And then one thing that I think will happen, and I think this was waiting. This was a long time coming for this team, and I thought this would happen a little bit earlier. I thought this team would really get it together later, but the Atlanta Falcons are, I believe they were my preseason winner of that division. I thought that the Saints would get a wild card spot, and I thought Atlanta would win the whole thing. And I think that Atlanta defense is really starting to come together. Atlanta had this big problem where they have a lot of very strong man defenders, and a lot of like bump, strong, in your face corners and linebackers. And they weren't using, and Dan Quinn's defense wasn't really using that to their advantage, and constantly were going to this drop back zone all the time. And it was mind boggling to a lot of people. And I think with this game, they've really shown against the Saints, they've really shown that they can kind of come together and become more of a threatening, aggressive, man coverage heavy defense. I don't think that the Saints are in big trouble for losing this game, but I think that the Atlanta defense is really coming together, and I think with the offense, Matt Ryan is back and healthy. So I do think they're going to get way better with Matt Ryan at the helm. I think they'll fight for a wild card spot. I don't think they'll get a wild card spot. I think there's too many good teams in the NFC that can get that spot ahead of them. But I definitely think they will fight, and they will go on a run from today onward. Now that I said that, they probably won't. But that's just what I think. Yeah. So that's my wild card spots. Just wanted to kind of talk about that. Everything else is pretty fine for the NFL. So we'll kind of shift to college football, and to kind of touch on the big game of the season so far, Alabama, LSU. First off, how did Joe Burrow not win the starting quarterback battle at Ohio State? And second, can we just give Joe Burrow the Heisman already? Can we just like stop the season and just say, Joe, you've been playing great. Here's your Heisman. That guy he has such fluent movement in the pocket for a guy that big and not that fast. Joe Burrow is kind of he reminds me a lot of Josh Allen, just for his scrambling ability and being able to make plays. Not so much design plays like Lamar Jackson, but if a play goes bad and a play needs to be extended, he will shift around that pocket to whatever he wants to do, because he looks like he's in full control during that game against Alabama. He will shift that pocket into any possible way he wants, and he will get the ball out quick. He will get the ball out with a lot of velocity, and he will find his playmakers. I think Joe Brady coming to that team really sparked something in Joe Burrow. And I think, honestly, LSU is my favorite to win the national championship at this point. I know that they've played some tough competition, and I know you could say Ohio State or Clemson they don't have to deal with that tough competition as LSU has. But I am so excited to see what LSU can do with the rest of their season, because Joe Burrow is just an insane talent. And Edwards-Helaire, that running back number 22 for LSU, he can tote the rock pretty well. And I think he is such a great complement to go with Joe Burrow, just being an undersized guy. He's kind of big around for his size, but he's got enough shiftiness, enough breaking tackles. He's kind of like a little bit of Mike Weber. He played for Ohio State a couple of years ago, or last season. He's got a little bit of Mike Weber to him. Maybe Mike's a little bit bigger, but Clyde Edwards-Helaire, if he gets picked up by the NFL, he should be a late round pick. I don't know what season he's in, but whenever he goes to the NFL, he will be a late round pick. He'll be a late round steal for whoever gets him, kind of like a Benny Snell last year. So I really like what LSU is doing. And I could crown them I've been giving them the number one spot on all of my tables for college football. But honestly, like, we really should just say this is our team to really make it all the way. I think they will win the whole college football playoff. But regardless, now let's shift to Bama. And I know that Bama they looked really pathetic in the first quarter, or in the first half, with the absurd fumble from Tua, as he's in the red zone. He's trying to extend a play. He's running out of the pocket. And then he tries to tuck it. And then he's running a little bit, and he's so excited to take on a block that he gets rid of the ball. This is something that I kind of thought I'd see coming, where he wouldn't be as fresh, he wouldn't be as ready, because we never really knew how bad the injury really was for Tua, just because Nick Saban didn't want to let anybody know about this. He wanted to keep everybody in the dark about Tua's injury, because that would give them an advantage against LSU, because they'd have to practice for the backup. I think his name's Mac Wilson, and then practice for Tua. But I just think that Tua definitely didn't play as well as he could. But here's my main issue with this loss for Alabama. I know it was a close game. I know you could say Tua was injured. Alabama's still going to make the college football playoff. And I'm going to say it, tell you why. The college football playoff committee already has deemed they will take, here's what will happen. They will take LSU or whoever wins the SEC. It'll be LSU, or maybe Auburn could make it back in, or Auburn won't make the college football playoff. If Auburn wins the SEC, there's going to be some big issues. So it'll be the SEC winner, probably LSU or Georgia. The Big Ten winner, which will be either Minnesota, Ohio State, or Penn State. It'll be Clemson or whoever wins the ACC, but probably Clemson. If Clemson doesn't win the ACC, then there's going to be mad hysteria. And then there's a fourth spot, which could either go to Oklahoma or the winner of the Big 12, which could be Baylor. It could be Baylor, Oregon, or Utah, whoever wins the Pac-12, or Alabama. I honestly think, and this is, I think this will happen. And because of this, because of Alabama making it into the college football playoff at number 4, it will cause complete mass hysteria for college football, because Alabama 2 times in this system has been forced in by the committee, not because of resume, because the only team that they've played this season with a very strong winning record is going to be LSU, loss, and Auburn. We don't know if they'll beat Auburn or not. They didn't have to play Georgia. They didn't have to play Florida. They didn't have to play LSU twice in the championship. They would be basically, Shannon Sharp on Undisputed likes, I really enjoy Shannon Sharp. He likes to call this the Alabama Invitational, this college football playoff, and I could not agree further with this. Alabama will, I think they will win out. They'll beat Auburn. They'll win the Iron Bowl. Everybody will sing Kumbaya, and they will make it into the college football playoff at number 4. And I think LSU, OSU, and Clemson will make it 1, 2, and 3. And Alabama will be in 4. And then we'll get to see the rematch of LSU and Alabama. Oh my gosh, aren't we excited, guys? Coach Orgeron is going to have he's going to mess up, and Alabama's going to win that game, because Alabama will not lose to LSU twice. I guarantee that. And by this point, everybody in the news media will freak out. Every college football fan in Oklahoma or Oregon, because I have them going 5 and 6. Everybody in those 2 will freak out. I think Minnesota will win out the rest of their season and have 1 loss. And I'll kind of talk about that later. But Minnesota fans will freak out. They will say, "Why aren't we in this? We beat Penn State. We were in a close game against Ohio State in the Big Ten championship." I think that will happen. We dominated the teams we had to. This is completely unfair to us as a team. And they would have to beat Wisconsin too. And I think Minnesota's schedule is harder than Alabama's. I think Minnesota should be back in it, but I'll save some more about Minnesota later in the question section. I think this will cause mass hysteria, and we'll move to an 8-team college football playoff scenario. And in that scenario, I actually talked to one of my friends about it. Caleb, he's a friend of mine. I went to the OSU game. We had dinner, and we kind of talked about the college football playoff scenario. And he said that an 8-team playoff would exist with the 5. And I think this would work, and I think this might be the way to go, is you have the 5 best teams in each conference, so the conference champions. You have 2 teams that are not the conference champions, but like the best 2 out. So that would be this season with my predictions, it would have to be Georgia, and it would have to be what's the other team? It would probably be Georgia and Minnesota, or Penn State, depending on what the record is, what the strength of schedule is. It's just going to depend. And then one group of 5 team that's really good. So it'd either be group of 5 or it'd be an independent team. So either Notre Dame or BYU, or even UMass, theoretically. I know UMass isn't going to make it, but whatever. So I think this 8-team playoff scenario will have to be enforced if Alabama gets in. I really, really don't like this system because it supports the idea of biases. I mean, there's former people in that committee room that have been ADs and coaches and players for those teams, and I just think that's completely unfair to the actual teams playing the game. Minnesota, no matter what happens, if they go undefeated with the rest of their season, they will not make the college football playoff, in my opinion. Oh, shoot. I probably should have saved that for later. But, okay, whatever. I'll talk about Minnesota more later. And then that's my table. I really like what's going on in college football right now, but it's a little bit corrupt. And I've been saying this for almost every episode, but this playoff system will not work, and it will change. And if Alabama makes it in this year to this college football playoff scenario, there will be complete mass hysteria, and everything will change. So yeah. Now to kind of move on to some NBA news. A lot of people have been talking about the whole Kawhi Leonard load management. A ton of players are starting to take off. Paul George is injured and Kawhi's injured. Maybe we don't really know what's happening here. And I kind of wanted to touch on this. A lot of people are calling. A lot of networks are getting very frustrated with the idea of load management. Because if you're ESPN or if you're TNT, let's say I'm ESPN and my buddy here is I don't know, Fox. I don't think Fox does NBA. I think it. I'm trying to think, but what the other networks are that do the NBA? NBC. So let's say I'm ESPN and my friend here is NBC, and I get Kawhi on every. I get the Clippers for Tuesday. He gets them on Thursday, and on Tuesday it comes out that Kawhi Leonard's injured. Kawhi Leonard will not be playing on that day, and they and my NBC friend, they say right after this game that Kawhi will be back, ready to play. That's fine. I'm fine with it. He's injured, whatever. We'll get on with it. So then next week rolls around, and we have a big game. We have the Clippers versus Milwaukee, which is a huge game. Everybody's going to watch. Giannis versus Kawhi. Who's going to have a better game? MVP implications, maybe. Get to that game. Kawhi Leonard out. Knee injury. I don't even know what the injury they're really saying it is. I think it might be a knee injury. But I'm going to start getting pissed off because I paid a lot of money to have people watch Kawhi. And if Kawhi's not on the court, first off, the team's not going to do as well. And I know that's important, but I'm going to start getting angry. And I think this is what people need to kind of take a step back, look at, and say, this is what the NBA has been for years. This is a player-driven league where the best players will go wherever they want to go. They will build super teams and duos that they want personally as players. And we're not really going to see any more. There's not going to be. This almost to me is the LeBron James the decision coming to a new generation. With LeBron James saying, having that big long TV special about building up his decision to leave Cleveland or stay in Cleveland, and he decides eventually to go to Miami, wins multiple championships, comes back to Cleveland, wins a championship, then goes to LA. But Cleveland basically just sat there and went, Oh, please, oh God, let LeBron stay. This is so important to us. If he could stay, we could definitely win a championship. We've been so close. And then he leaves for Miami and builds a super team. This is our generation, this generation of NBA basketball's decision. With Kawhi Leonard wanting to sit out, with Paul George wanting to sit out, because they don't care about the regular season at all. What matters is when they get to the playoffs. And I think people need to just understand that this is our future. This is what we have to deal with at this point as NBA fans. We're not going to see James Harden play every single game. We're going to see Russell Westbrook come in there and take over for a little bit and win a few games here and there. We're not going to see Giannis play every single game. It's going to hurt basketball, and it's going to hurt viewership because who wants to see that when a lot of the times there's other football on, and for me there's a lot of Premier League action going on too. So it's going to hurt the sport, but this is what the NBA is going to be, and I think we just need to move on. We need to recognize that this is going to happen. I don't think this is going to destroy the viewership for the Clippers. I think Lou Williams is still really good off the bench. I think Patrick Beverley is still going to play most of the games in the season. He's going to be a really good player. So I think that this isn't going to hurt the Clippers as much as some people say, but I think that people really need to get over themselves and just take a step back and say, hey, this is the NBA. This is our league. This is what players want. We'll take it. Because what else do you have at this point? There's no other NBA. So unless you want to watch the G League, but that's even less stars. So that's a little bit on load management. Just a little bit about the college basketball season. I am super stoked for college basketball. I'm not as big into it as I am on football, though I will be keeping you updated. I do think that Michigan State is my favorite to win this year in college basketball. I think the Big Ten is not as well built as I think the ACC is going to like. The ACC always is the best conference in basketball, but especially with Duke, Virginia coming back, and I think Virginia will have a lot of good talent. I like their coach a lot. Virginia, Duke, and North Carolina are all going to basically just beat up on every single other person in that conference. And with smaller teams like Louisville and Notre Dame and even Wake Forest being able to stay relevant last season, I think they're definitely still going to beat down a lot of those teams in other conferences. So I think that the conferences like the Big Ten and the SEC might have some better might have winners coming out of them just because their schedule is a lot less difficult. Though it might not be as fun. I do think Michigan State with the depth, or not the depth, rather the age of everybody on the roster. Cassius Winston is insane. He has been dominating these first couple of games. I know it's against some not great competition, but once they start getting into the regular season, they'll really start to pick up. And I don't think there's really anybody else in the Big Ten that can really keep up with Michigan State at this point. Indiana's fine. Wisconsin's fine. Ohio State's fallen off a little bit. They didn't play. I know the scoreboard didn't say, but they didn't play well against Cincinnati. And Michigan lost their head coach to the Cleveland Cavaliers job. I think they'll definitely stay relevant, but I don't think they're going to compete with Michigan State at this point. I think Michigan State honestly could cakewalk their way through the Big Ten and make it as a 1 seed in the tournament. And then I think that's about it. I just think Michigan State is going to easily make their way throughout the college basketball landscape. So very excited. I do want to see how the ACC shakes up just because there's so many dominant teams in there. The SEC, it's fine. The Big 12 always has some team that comes out and really shows up and is really flashy. So I'll be excited for the Big 12. In Memphis, I haven't really kept up a lot with Memphis, but I do know that they have the best recruiting class. So I'll be really excited to watch how Memphis does, especially against UC, which is so close to home. So very excited for college basketball. Kind of move on to the questions. We only have a couple questions this week. Remember, leave your questions in the comments to this video and for next week. And also on my Instagram, I will be posting daily, or not daily, but weekly, the post to this video and ask for questions. So just leave your comments in that section of the Instagram or through this video. So the questions, the first one is from Rhett. He asks, what's happening with the Dolphins? He is a Dolphins fan, he tells me, and he's wondering, how come they have more wins than the Pats? So that is because the Pats only have played 1 game, and it's against a good team. And the Dolphins have played some pretty bad teams. So the Dolphins winning against Indy really hurt them a lot. I know that they're tanking, but I thought the plan was to tank, not to win games. It might be an issue where the head coach, I can't think of his name, Patriots guy. His name is escaping me, but I know that the coach really wants to keep his players invested, and he wants to keep everybody positive. But I thought the plan was to tank, and when you're keeping everybody positive, keeping everyone really excited to play instead of tank, why didn't you do that when Kenyon Drake was still on the team? Why didn't you do that when Kenny Stills was still on the team? Why didn't you do that when Mika Fitzpatrick was still on the team? Unless your plan all along was to trade away all those players. I just think you would want to keep Mika Fitzpatrick because he's such a big leader on that team. I know you got a first-round pick for him, and that's fine. He didn't lose any value. But you know, he's I thought you would want to keep a player like Mika Fitzpatrick that's such a big leader and knows what it's like to win on certain teams, coming from the Alabama pedigree. I don't know. It's just, I feel like Miami's kind of losing their plan. And I really liked what Miami was doing originally, but now that they've won 2 games, it's like, do you really have a plan? Are you trying to lose, or are you trying to keep Brian Flores, that's his name, Flores' job? I don't know. So I don't really trust Miami to win the Tank Bowl. I've already kind of established that last video. I think Cincinnati will definitely win, representing. But you know, I just think Miami don't really have as much of a plan as I thought they did, which is kind of depressing because I thought they had a plan. So sorry, Rhett. I'm sorry your team keeps winning football games. And then the next question, what does this is a question from Luke. He's wondering about my Minnesota college football playoff ranking. I already kind of explained that I don't think I don't think Minnesota will make it into the college football playoff at the end of the season. I think they will force it to where they will put in Ohio State, or they will put in one of the Pac-12 teams over Minnesota, just because Minnesota doesn't really have the big brand, and nobody is going to really want to see that. I know that's a really cynical and sad outlook on Minnesota's chances, but it's all about the money at this point, and that's not what the college football playoff should be about. It should be about getting the best teams in there and playing the best college football games and seeing who wins. It should not be a case of money, and Minnesota isn't going to bring in the same amount of money as a Ohio State or an Alabama or a Penn State, so they will not make it in my opinion. I do think they should be ranked higher, though. If it were me, I think they should be ranked in the top 4 or the top 5. I mean, Penn State was ranked 4th in the country, and they didn't really play too many strong opponents. I know they played they already played Iowa. Iowa's not the team that their record shows. I think they're kind of middling. And then they beat Michigan, who Michigan's fine. Michigan's whatever. I don't think Michigan's very good. But Minnesota beat Penn State, which is a big deal. So I really think they should be a lot higher than 7th. Right now they're 7th. I don't think that we've actually had the playoff presentation yet to show what the college football playoff thinks of every single team. I think they should be 4th. I think they should be 5th or 6th, maybe. They should definitely be in that top 6 area. But I don't think that the committee will really want to put them in there, just because they want to put they're going to keep LSU up there. They're going to keep Ohio State, especially with the Maryland win. I went to that game, and God, Ohio State just embarrassed Maryland. It was pretty depressing if I were a Maryland fan, which I'm not, which is good. But Minnesota, I just don't think they should make 4 or 5. They'll definitely move up Oregon and Oklahoma, just because Alabama is not. Alabama will probably be in the top 6, knowing the college football playoff. Georgia will be up there. I can see Minnesota being 7, based on what the college football playoff is doing. So yeah, that's just my thoughts on Minnesota. I wish they would get in. If Ohio State loses to Minnesota in the Big Ten championship, I'll be upset for a little bit, but I will. I'll eventually come around and want Minnesota to do well onward. So yeah, that's my college football playoff idea for Minnesota. So that's episode 3 of the podcast. Thank you all so much for watching. Remember, leave your questions in the comments for next video in the description of this one and on the Instagram. My Instagram is @therealmanofficial01. So check me out on there. I will be posting some pictures of the Ohio State game within the next couple of days. Very excited to see what's going on with the rest of the podcast. And now I have a intro for my videos. So I hope you guys like that. And thank you guys so much for watching. Have a wonderful day, and stay warm out there, because it is in Dayton, Ohio. It is freezing, and we just had snow, and it's like middle of November. This is horrible. I don't really want it to snow anymore. Plus, I got class that I have to go to like 20 minutes away from here. So pray for me, because it's gonna be crazy in the snow. So anyways, a little aside. Thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you for being a part of the All Sports Podcast. And I'll see you next Tuesday for the next episode. Thank you, guys. See you later.